I'm a valuable commodity. I go across the middle. I see a dude coming at me, trying to kill me. I tell myself, get killed. Catch the ball. Booyah. Touchdown. I make miracles happen. Welcome in to the Bro Force Squad podcast. This is episode 116, and we're just a bunch of bros drinking beer and talking movies. I am your host, Jeff Hornacek. Before we get started with the movie discussion tonight, let's go around and meet the fellow bros. And first off, we go in the paint to our enforcer, Matt Geiger. Now, Geiger, I don't know if you remember, but on our 100th episode, I asked where you thought you'd be by the time we hit episode 200, and you said probably dead. So let's just do a little evaluation. We're roughly 15% of the way there. How's your prediction looking?
Not too good, especially the way 2020 is kicking off. I might just Jeffrey Epstein myself, which means just kind of going to my next door neighbor and asking them to help me hang myself, because I'm just ready to leave, which will actually make the pod more profitable, because I'll be like the Kurt Cobain of the pod. Be like, how good would the pod be if he was still alive?
Plus, maybe I don't want this on recording, but if you die, like, my portion of the pie gets bigger, right?
I think just Cycles does, if I've read the contract right.
Oh, I should have looked that over before I signed it. Kind of a personal problem. All right, and next we have a very special guest with us tonight, writer, director, actor, and unfortunately for him, a very close relative of mine, my cousin, Michel Monty, joining us for the first time on the pod. Michael, thank you so much for coming on to give us a little bit of credibility here, and not to put you on the spot, but I do remember at your high school graduation, you or maybe your mom showed me a film that you had made in high school that parodied both The Phantom Menace and The Fast and Furious. And do you remember this film, and can you describe the plot to our listeners?
Yeah. Firstly, I just want to address that initial point you made, Jeff Hornacek. It's not unfortunate at all. We're all very happy for you. The rest of extended family, we're all very proud of you and the great work you guys are doing on this amazing podcast.
Thank you.
I do remember the little slice of cinema you're talking about is the BT 500, the Phantom Menace, Tokyo Drift with the full title.
Obi-Wan is in Tokyo.
That was our jumping off point when we were writing it. That we made a bunch of really dumb shorts, and I think that's kind of what inspired me and a friend of mine to kind of start pursuing it more seriously. But yeah, we had one just called Heist. You can guess what that one's about. We had one called Top Lock for no other reason than we thought it sounded cool.
These titles kick ass.
Yeah, they're pretty good. We had Brash Mustache. That one was good. That was our take on a cop drama.
It'd be funny in that if the lead detective did not actually have any facial hair. He just was.
Well, it depends on. Yeah, we had a lot of fake mustaches. We put a lot of women in fake mustaches, men in fake mustaches. People who had mustaches got fake mustaches. That's where all our budget went for that one.
If I remember right, the Phantom Menace Tokyo Drift one revolved around like people who would race in like office chairs.
Yeah.
Is that correct? And it was made like mockumentary style?
Yes, it was. You do a lap around the high school in office chairs that you stole from the apologetics classroom. And whipping each other with your uniform tie was not strictly illegal.
Oh, that's right. You had
really
uniform. I mean, people are going to want this dug up, so we'll have to find the VHS and share it with the world.
Yeah, hopefully I've buried it in the, deepest depths of Facebook. But
the internet never forgets.
No.
All right, if you guys have listened to our show before, then you know that we start every episode off with the most important thing in any bro's life, and that is chest day. And today we're actually broaching a topic that has been teased for probably like the past 4 years on this show, but it's no secret that we're all kids of the 90s on here. We've probably done more movie commentaries on films from that decade than any other. And really that's because the era defined our taste, produced some of the most memorable movies around, but we've decided what actually defines a 90s movie, either whether it's a kid's movie or an adult movie. So what we want to do tonight, similar to how we built our action movie bingo scorecards a month or so ago with tropes that action movies all seem to exhibit, is we want to really examine why the 90s films were so badass and all the things that we saw in them as kids that we either loved hated, or just really remember because they were so ridiculous. So we don't have a distinct methodology here, but the way that I figured would be the easiest way to break this down would be the 90s kids movies, like the ones that when we saw were actually like meant for us. And then I just listed them as iconic movies, but basically like all the other movies that came out that were, I guess, at the time of the 90s made for a more mature audience, but looking back on them, they have a very distinct flavor or taste or exhibit all of the same tropes. So before we dive in and start separating these, Michael, how would you sort of describe how 90s movies have impacted you, or anything in particular from that decade or that era that you're like, oh, that's a 90s movie?
Yeah. Well, I listened to your guys' episode on Pulp Fiction. I think that you guys released a couple weeks ago. And I agreed a lot with what you guys were saying. That movie in particular really affected me, and I think it was one of the more influential films of that decade. It's almost like the way that they would experiment with concept back then. You know, like the 80s had a lot of like really fun, big movies. But the 90s would just like take a strange idea and just exaggerate it, like Truman Show, or like The Mask, or I mean,
even Forrest Gump. Really, it's kind of like parodying like this aw shucksy doodle coming of age story.
Yeah, for sure. And like there was one thing, like it was to its detriment, extremely, The Matrix. Strictly iconic. Like everything, like you watch The Matrix and it's like these fucking I watched a movie recently and I was expecting it to like blow my socks off, and it did in a lot of ways, but I realized that movie's just like written by like the world's coolest 12-year-old. Like it's just all the language is just like you're the one and destiny and fate, and like everybody's wearing these ridiculously tiny sunglasses and like this just like pleather thing. It's great. But yeah,
was there any leather that was not used in The Matrix? I think they actually like commandeered the world's leather supply.
If there's a certain type of leather, it was featured heavily in The Matrix and its sequels.
Has any actor had more character development or layers than Keanu Reeves? Like, I mean, Point Break and The Matrix, and he went away for a while. Now he's John Wick.
Speed, dude.
Yeah.
Was one of the Bill and Ted's in the 90s? The second one, maybe?
Bogus Journey?
Yeah, probably.
One of the key elements of this podcast is we just won't look something up. So someone at home's like, it's this year, damn it. Use the internet, which of course is at my fingertips, but
Can I throw out a movie next? Because I want to piggyback right off Michael.
Please.
Get in it.
So, I'm a huge Tarantino backer. Own all of his movies. However, Pulp Fiction in 1994 came out. Still a very iconic movie today. Some argue Tarantino's best film ever. Some argue one of the best film evers. In 1994, this movie also came out, also by a director that is on the same Mount Rushmore as Tarantino, about the same type of movie, but I don't think it gets as much play anymore, and that is Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers. And I have no clue why, because if you watch this with Pulp Fiction, I will say, and Pulp Fiction is one of my favorite movies of all time, but if you give me, like we asked Kevin L. Johnson, a case of beer and a pizza, I will watch Natural Born Killers. Not only that, is Tarantino loves to use music in his movies. Watch Reservoir Dogs, of course. I would argue that music in this movie is better than any music in Tarantino's movie, especially when you capture the time whenever they break out of jail and Rage Against the Machine fucking plays, which is like an iconic 90s band. This is a perfect movie, one of Oliver Stone's best. And in the 90s, he was, I think, a better director than Tarantino with this movie. JFK is another one, but Natural Born Killers is one that isn't on TV that much. Pulp Fiction's on AMC way more than this, and Natural Born Killers, same year, 1994. And I don't think it gets as much love.
Tarantino originally wrote Natural Born Killers and
exactly, yes,
right? But
Tarantino wrote it, yeah.
Not to stir the pot, but I think he disowned the movie. That's why he took away his writing credit.
Oh, wow.
Well, and actually, I'm a bigger fan. I mean, if you want me to keep going, I mean, True Romance is my favorite Tarantino movie, which is one he actually wrote.
That script. Do you ever read I love that script. That's a great movie.
The Dennis Hopper and Walken scene is Like,
yes.
Yeah.
That's how you write dialogue.
Tense.
Val Kilmer as Elvis, who's like his split personality in the mirror all the time.
Just cuz.
I mean, it's got a power pack. Yeah.
No, that's
90s
great.
movies had that edgy, like almost trippy movie that I don't think the 2000s has as much anymore.
No, I think so. I think that's why it's crazy, and I think you guys actually brought this up in the Pulp Fiction episode, is that, you know, obviously the idea of playing with the linearness of time, you know, of course, like when you're like even a montage is playing with time, right? You're skipping forward in beats. A movie skips over scenes that are boring, whatever. But the idea that a movie would start and tell its chapters very purposefully out of order to build to a greater feeling or tone. It's almost surprising that hasn't happened before in movie history before, like Reservoir Dogs out of the gate. It's bouncing back and forth between like these origin stories of like Mr. Blonde or Mr. Orange. And it's all about like revealing information, right? And how they decide to do that makes it just a more exciting film. I'll be honest with you, I've only ever seen like the end of like Natural Born Killers. I haven't seen it all the way through, so I can't.
It's kind of eclectic filmmaking. Like, Matt,
There's a scene you have to watch with Rodney Dangerfield. He plays Juliette Lewis's dad, who's like touches her and stuff like that. But the theme song behind it's like a Leave It to Beaver, when he's just like, if you go out with this guy, I'm going to beat the shit out of you, then I'm going to rape you. And then it's like the weird, like 1960s sitcom, like zwing, like going, it's insanely fucking like just brilliantly directed. And also I didn't even mention how awesome Woody Harrelson is in it. I mean, he was brilliant in this role. And I mean, this is like something that brought him from Cheers to White Man Can't Jump to be like, oh, this guy could fucking win an Oscar.
Well, was White Man Can't Jump, was that the 90s? Because
92.
That movie slept on. I fucking love that movie to death.
I'm a huge backer of that.
It's so
great.
Good. I think that was actually before he passed away. I think Stanley Kubrick talked about how that was one of his favorite movies. And it's like, it's fucking good, man.
It's so simple, but it's like, the characters are just so vibrant, but also like grounded in reality. Like Rosie Perez's character is crazy, but you're never in the movie like, dude, no one like this actually exists.
No, you're like, fuck yeah. She goes on Jeopardy and fucking.
Yeah, she's like studying for Jeopardy.
On the pod, we've talked about remaking it. We'd like to remake it with Michael B. Jordan and Justin Timberlake.
Oh, that'd be great. I mean,
because Timberlake can actually ball a little bit.
My problem is I cast Michael B. Jordan in everything. It's like doesn't even really make some of the roles. I think I've cast him to play like me in a movie. It's like,
this is I'm gonna average it out. So like the first Rocky was like 70s, right? And Creed was like 2010s. So that's technically, like statistically, that's the 90s if you're talking about both of them.
Math.
Did you see the first Creed? That movie good.
We love Creed.
Really, that opening is so hot. It's just like this boom, like through this thing. You're seeing this kid in this like juvenile detention center getting in this fight, and it's just like this woman's waiting for him. She's like, "Do you know who I am? Like, do you know who you are?" And it's like, boom, title credits, Creed, and it's like, oh, so fucking cool.
And Michael, I'm a pretty big sucker for like one take shots or shots where you can trick me into thinking it's one take. Sure. And there's a boxing match scene.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
I don't know how Coogler, like, it looked like the camera was on a crane and he just told Michael B. Jordan, like, hey, can you just punch this guy for like 4 minutes straight and no cuts? Yeah. Because that's how I want to film this. And that scene alone, I was like, my jaw was on the floor.
So well choreographed. Yeah, I'm curious to see what kind of system they had for that camera, because it's like it seemed like almost like an automated thing like you might do for like capturing like motion capture or something like that, because it was just so smooth and precise. But I should look it up. That's good, because that scene was so dope, because they play that whole fight right in the scene in one shot.
Yeah, it's like at least a whole round that he has to actually box. Like there's really no way to not have that happen.
So Jeff, how you just want us to say like statement, this is why I'm picking this movie, because I got like 2 or 3 like statements I want to make.
Yeah, bring up a few of the movies, because then before we move on to kid movies, I have just a few tropes from like the iconic movies that I want to bring up and we can talk about.
Oh, let's talk.
You want me to do 2 more?
Yeah, whatever ones.
I got 2 more, then I'll be done. Okay. Believe it or not, we have women that listen to our podcast. I know, it's fucking insane. They comment on stuff, and they're fucking awesome, and we appreciate you.
I apologize.
So Mean Girls didn't come out in the 90s. But you know what did?
What?
But you know what did is a better movie that I will watch every time on TV, and that is Clueless. Clueless is a great fucking movie. And it is a woman's movie, but it is a movie that men fucking dig. It's just like Mean Girls. It was meant for women, but men are like, this movie's fucking great. Paul Rudd, I believe it's one of his very early movies. He hasn't aged, so it's kind of
quick fact about Paul Rudd. After he films a movie, he is put into a cryogenic sleep so he doesn't age, and then reawoken when he has to shoot. Right.
Alicia Silverstone's perfect in it. It's fucking
Brittany
awesome.
Murphy?
It's Brittany Murphy. May she rest in peace.
From Scrubs is in it.
Yeah, he's in it too. It's such a great movie, man. And like when I watch it, it totally captures, like we said, the 90s time of, the mini malls were fucking red hot. They're in California. They got the cell phones. The dude from Scrubs wearing the he looks like he's like a member of Crisscross the band or whatever. It's fucking great. But and especially whenever 21 Jump Street, when they're calling out, it's like, okay, those are nerds, those are goths. I don't know what those are, but I mean, back in the 90s, you had the grunge, and they had that's what the dude from he's in Road Trip and also in Franklin and Bash with Zach Morris.
Breckin Meyer.
Breckin Meyer, yeah. I mean, he was like a grunge fucking
skateboarder
dude. Yeah, that listened to Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains. Fucking great movie. Great 90s movie on TV all the time. And it's awesome when it's a girl movie. Sometimes my wife's like, this is a girl movie. And I'm like, this isn't for me. But it's awesome when there's a girl movie and guys can be like, this is a fucking great movie. And that's what Clueless is.
I've seen that on a lot of top movies of the 90s. I did a little research. I tried to cram it in before this podcast. And it's like Clueless kept coming up time after time. And I was like, how have I not seen this fucking movie? So if I knew early, it's to go watch Clueless.
I was going to say, if I have seen it, I don't remember much about I do remember Paul Rudd and Alicia Silverstone. It was like a very affluent part of California that they live in.
Step brother and sister. It's cool if they have sex. It's fine. Whatever.
Spoilers.
California.
Sure.
Anyway, my last one, and I'll throw it to you guys and Drake and comment when I can. My last one is, I think this was the first time, I was maybe 8, that I realized critics don't really know what the fuck they're talking about. And that's when they slammed Hook. Because Hook is a great fucking movie. We've done a movie commentary on Hook. Look it up. Every time I watch Hook, now as an adult, I watch it intently thinking, how does this suck? Are the critics right? And I finally am like, no, this is a ton of fun. The only thing that I still don't understand is when Shmi shows up when he goes back to London and he's like scooping the street. I don't understand that. At
the very end,
Jeff, we talked about it on the pod. Was it a dream? But it wasn't a dream because the kids were missing. But Shmi,
it's like Wizard of Oz, It's like you still kind of buy that Dorothy went to the land of Oz, to a degree. She got knocked out, but it's like, was it all a dream? But then you see all these people who suddenly pop up, but it's like, some part of you still's like, okay, what's the corroboration here between real life and this adventure I just went through?
Yeah, maybe in Neverland, your mind is sort of you're seeing people sort of in the goggles of what they look like in the real world. Maybe Shmi was a 6'8" Polynesian woman, but the way he views her is like the street sweeper in rural London.
But we've talked about this on pod, how movies now are just repeats and there's no creativity. That's one of the most creative movies I've ever seen with Steven Spielberg. It's like, what if Peter Pan grew up and then he had to go back and relearn? It'd be like us relearning to finger paint or something or playing Sega or something that we haven't done in years. I used to be the shit at this, but now I'm old and fat and an accountant. I mean, I can't beat Sonic and Tails level 3. Are you kidding me? But the movie, the story, the acting, Robin Williams was a fucking perfect Peter Pan in that, and that movie is fucking great. Critics did not know what they were talking about because they bashed that movie when it came out.
Another 90s movies that I think I'll even argue was even more ridiculous that at the time kind of did not do super well with critics was The Big Lebowski. which is hard to think of because that movie was just so, like, every scene is just...
People weren't ready for it.
They really weren't. Like, normally that's like, if somebody says that, it's like, okay, M. Night Shyamalan, whatever you say. But, like, that movie's a perfect example of, like, you watch that once, it's really good, or maybe it went over your head. You watch that movie's in your top 20, if not top 10. Mm-hmm. Like, so fucking good, that film.
Its level of humor, like, I've seen a few. This is happens a lot of time with, like, British dry wit, where some people can watch it and, like, 20 minutes in they'll ask you, is this a comedy? Like, yeah. Are you not laughing at the shit he's saying? Like, I just didn't know these were jokes. Okay, I'll look at it from a different lens now. Because the whole, like, the dude in and of itself is, like, there's really no, especially at the time, mid to early 90s, there was no, like, precedent for that character on film, really.
No, you're right. Certainly not in America, because it's like, I heard someone once, I forget where, probably some famous source that a lot of people will remember, but I heard someone once describing the idea of, like, the difference between, like, an American and a British comedy. It comes down to, like, an American comedy's like when you're at the bar and you're trying to hit on some attractive woman that's out of your league, and this guy starts playing the guitar on stage and it sucks, and you go up and you break his guitar. In a British comedy, you're the dude playing the guitar. Like, that's kind of the difference of this world of, like, in British comedy, you see it over and over again. Like, you're just the guy that gets shat on. And in an American comedy, you're Bill Murray all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Damn, that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Of course, we would make ourselves Bill Murray all the time.
Of course, if given the option.
I would say, would that be the most iconic 90s comedy besides maybe, like, Dumb and Dumber or something like that? But The Big Lebowski is such a cult following.
Sure. Maybe.
Yeah, it's probably usurped, like, even the other Jim Carrey movie. Like, Michael mentioned The Mask and obviously Ace Ventura, but I would
Both Ace
probably
Venturas, yeah.
But I feel like Ace Ventura almost, and maybe it's because Jim Carrey just, like, Liar, just because he had too many good comedies.
Yeah, I mean, I think When Nature Calls is the best one. I mean, that's like the funniest one.
Hot take.
I would even say that's almost as funny as Dumb and Dumber, but The Big Lebowski is such a cult following that people will kill you if you don't like that. Like, everyone, Dumb and Dumber, I'm like, yeah, it's a great comedy. If you think, like, yeah, it's okay, I won't probably say anything. But The Big Lebowski, if you're like, I don't get it, I'm like, well, then you just don't fucking understand.
That's a problem with you. That's something you need to sort out.
Do you like Big Lebowski, or do you want to fight? Those are the only two. I like that.
Yeah.
Do you like it, or are you fucking stupid?
My favorite scene in that, if we're gonna do the Bro Force Squad, like, best scene, is definitely John Goodman whenever he calls out fucking fouls. Because that is so, me and Nate Thurman golf all the time, and that's like what we would do. He's like, listen, I'm just trying to run a clean game here, okay? Like, I'm gonna fucking call out shit if I see it.
Over the line. Sorry, Smoke, is over the line. It's a league match, Smoke. It's over the line.
We're not gun. We can't have utter anarchy up here. Right in the heat of the moment, you might think I overreacted. In 2 days, you'll be like, oh, well, that was deserved. To keep the peace.
The diner scene where he's like, they're gonna kill that poor woman. He's like, they sent her tow. He's like, oh, they said they're gonna. I can get you a tow. I can get you a tow by 3 p.m. with nail polish.
With nail polish. He's like on eBay, which doesn't even exist. All right, so before we briefly touch on kids' movies of the 90s, there were a few tropes that kind of existed in the non-kids 90s movies that I wanted to bring up, and then if this triggers any movie or even just like a general thought in your head, feel free to spout it out. So the first thing was, because this was kind of the inception of the internet, was that in the 90s this was like the beginning of hackers in movies. So like the original stereotype of, like, although the hacker in the 90s probably knows as much as like an 8-year-old does now. But it was like, holy shit, this guy knows how to log onto the internet. We're fucked. And
what they could do was infinite.
Right.
Like, there was no limit to what like in now, it's almost like as their abilities increase, the reality diminishes. But back then it was like, yeah, you could you could get into the White House, with just like a whistle and like the right telephone number to call. And it's like, I don't know, like the movie Hackers, if you just needed some fingerless gloves and like the world was your oyster.
Because back then the person next to you in the theater would be like, can the internet do that? And they'd be like, I don't know, probably. You could probably just guess the president's email address and password and launch a missile to Iran.
Which was
Another
basically
one.
the premise of War Games, right?
That's true. Matthew Broderick shout out. A second one, and Matt, this is especially obvious at like the end of the Power Rangers movie, which check out our movie commentary on that. But CGI started to exist, but it doesn't really look good. But people were like, "Fuck it, just put it in the movie."
Yeah.
Like sir.
Minus Jurassic Park, that movie holds up.
Yeah, that was insane. The CGI work on that. But I even think of like T2.
Oh yeah.
Like
that it does not look as good as you think it does.
No, but at the time you're probably like, holy shit, did they have to hire like an actual ball of mercury to morph into that helicopter? And then you watch it now and you like want to vomit. You're like, who thought this? Because my thing that I always say is like, if you can't do an effect, that's totally fine, man. But just don't do it. Like,
well, that's why it was so smart how Jurassic Park would build these fully animatronic like raptor heads and bits of the like build out the entire Triceratops. And then for the wide nighttime stuff where it's raining and it's hard to tell, they're like, yeah, go full CGI here. And it's like they build around it. And they do a great job of knowing when to cut into what. But yeah.
The use of practical and CGI in that movie, even looking back, is like pretty seamless.
Yeah.
Another one that I had, Matt, this one's funny to think about, like how Shrek has parodied it, but we started to get our first action scenes in slow motion. Like The Matrix obviously started it, but like Charlie's Angels, The Transporter.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, now
The Matrix probably like almost not invented it, but made it like really popular.
For sure.
Yeah.
But before that, like Jean-Claude Van Damme, the frame would never like slow down while he like roundhouse.
Yeah, right.
And even when you did, it was almost like you wouldn't have the right frame rate. Like you remember the beginning to Reservoir Dogs, where they're all like walking to like Little Green Bag, that song, and it's like right after the diner scene. It's like they do this like slow-mo scene of them just walking and playing that music, and it's like. It's just like this jittery thing where it's like, okay, we really only had 24 frames, but now we're just playing them at 12 a second. Like, you don't mind, do you? And it's like, no, I don't. It's fine.
And it just makes you think, like, dude, if I could slow time down like that in my head, I could kick the shit out of like 11 people by myself. So how do I do that?
Yeah.
Well, last thing I wanted to bring up, and then anything you guys want to add, obviously, but I think high school movies were kind of took on a whole different meaning from like the 80s sort of who's the guy who did like Pretty in Pink and The Breakfast Club? John Hughes.
Michael C. Hall.
He's the actor, but yeah, John Hughes did those. But in the 90s there was like a whole new set of tropes, and one of my favorite ones of course is like chick who's obviously beautiful, but no, she's actually not because she's wearing glasses and her hair is up.
Like she's hotter than shit.
You're like, but she's a 9. I don't know. Her hair is up. Maybe you're missing that part. And not another teen movie parodies is perfect.
In She's All That, Taylor's hot as hell. The bitchy chick.
Well, yeah, bitchy chick always has to be hot, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's actually a good point.
And
like,
bitchy chick
90s was like this big thing of like, it was very like cliquey and everything. Like Germans are bad. Jocks are bad. Cheerleaders are bad. Like nerdy kids, they might be a little quirky, but they're going to be the good guys. Don't you worry. Like every time, or like at least the cool kid that hung with the nerds was always like oftentimes the hero type.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like there was not a lot of like what your note was. That's where you kind of stuck. And then there wasn't a lot of, it was almost like a constant series of like underdog films for the entire 90s. You know what I mean?
Matt, to your point, 21 Jump Street parodies like the paradigm shift in high school clickiness. Yeah, where Channing Tatum shows up and he's like, what the fuck? This is not at all like...
Tells the captain, he's like, there's these popular kids, but they're not real popular kids. It's weird, it's unnatural,
and
needs to stop.
It needs to stop.
Like,
yeah, because like
stop.
Caring about school is like cool again.
Yeah.
Whereas like in the 90s, it was like if you just don't give a shit about your SAT scores. Like,
don't care about anything.
Yeah. They don't the goth kids too. Yeah, that was you had a token one.
If you had a movie without a goth kid, you didn't have a movie. So there you go.
Where's our goth kid?
That would be your studio notes. So there's a lack of painted.
Like the director's like, you're gonna put the goth kid on the cutting room floor? Like that's our heart of the movie.
Yeah, Jared Leto's Joker, fine, but goth kid in a mid-90s movie? No. I don't care if we have to have a 2-hour director's cut of this fucking thing. There's a goth kid in there. All right, before we move on to kids' movies, anything you guys want to add that we left out?
I think you nailed the tropes pretty well from the kids' films. Yeah, I feel pretty. Oh, the one thing I will bring up, which I feel very, there's this idea of like, especially in TV, but also in like kids' adventure movies too, that everyone gets a color.
That's so true.
And it was such like a thing at the time.
And oftentimes it might have matched your ethnicity. I don't know, happenstance.
Yes.
Like the turtles, like they're not turtles. There's an orange one. There's a purple one. Hell, there's even a blue one. I mean,
the weirdest thing I heard.
Colors.
The Ninja Turtles were so fucking big. They were so fucking big.
Oh my! It was like unbelievable looking back.
They had live concerts where they just were like doing like their takes on these covers of these songs.
Where they would do nothing because they wouldn't sing. They would just play the music in the background and they would.
Yeah.
I mean, you know this. I had like 4 consecutive birthdays, probably at an age much later than I should have, that were Ninja Turtle themed.
No, I would have one right now. My birthday's
Jeff,
coming up and
when did you stop
book it.
Matt's right. You know, now's
keep the turtles 6 feet apart. Everything will be fine. Let's fucking do it.
If anything, they're covered up. They're in a good spot.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But the craziest thing I learned is so apparently the original Ninja Turtles, and stop me if you guys know this, but were centered around like it's almost like a weird take on the superhero Daredevil. Have you heard this?
I did not know this.
No.
They were blind or something?
So Frank Miller kind of wrote on both, right? And so Daredevil, he's blinded as a kid, right, and gets superpowers, which he's hilarious. He's a blind man who has the ability to see, which is his superpower, which I kind of love. But anyway, whatever. He's a guy.
Kind of a whole issue, yeah. So you're just like everybody else? Okay.
So the ooze that blinded him supposedly made the turtles. And there's all these weird little hidden things in it, like Daredevil fights the hand, turtles fight the foot. Daredevil was trained by Stick. They were trained by Splinter. Damn. Like the red thing that they originally all had red bandanas, kind of like Elektra with like the Psy, which Raphael has. It's weird, man. It's like
holy shit! I never made these.
I know. Isn't that weird?
The hand and foot. Who's working on the abdomen? But I'm.
Spider-Man's got the abdomen. Spider-Man's got great abs.
Yeah, he does.
Anyway.
CrossFit. That was a great segue. All right, kids' movies of the 90s. So obviously this is like what we grew up with, what shaped us. And we've done commentaries on a lot of these. I know we've done commentaries on Home Alone, Free Willy, Toy Story, Lion King, Hook, Space Jam, Mighty Ducks, Hocus Pocus, Aladdin, Rookie of the Year, and Three Ninjas. That's just off the list.
Poor wives.
You guys are busy.
Never pay attention to them.
We don't have friends, or actually, even before quarantine, I don't think I've left the house in 14 months. So, Michael, I'll toss it to you first. Any specific 90s movies, maybe even something not on this list that stood out to you as like, oh yeah, when I think 90s, that's where my head goes.
Well, it's hard because it's a lot of the movies that made me love movies are very 90s films. And I remember when I remember it was 1997 and I think I was 8 years old. And I remember thinking, even by 97, people were talking about the 80s and the 70s and the 60s as very distinct. And I remember thinking like, it's weird because like the 90s don't have any style at all. They just are. So what are people going to possibly make fun of in the future? Because
that's such a good point. When you're in it, you're too close to see the full picture, you know?
I'm like a kid, you know, from the Midwest who's just like, oh, my accent is just normal. Everyone else is the weird one.
Right.
And then you realize you're actually from New Jersey and everyone's making fun of you.
What's wrong with the way I talk?
But yeah, no, I guess like for me, the biggest 90s, there's a lot of great stuff that came out of the 90s. There's a lot of like, I think of like Silence of the Lambs is one of my favorite 90s films. They had morality it almost felt like it needed to be a part of story back then. Like, you couldn't have an ambiguous ending in the 90s. Like, you had to make a point. And oftentimes it was very on the nose and over the top, and like the good guys and bad guys were clearly stated. But it's like there was very, very little ambiguity in the 90s, which is why I think like when, like certain Tarantino movies came out, that was so odd, because you're seeing these anti-heroes for the first time driving a movie, and I think later on you start to see it a lot more. But yeah, the 90s had something to teach kids. A lot of environmentalism in the 90s too.
I was looking up a list of like common tropes, and this totally went over my head as a kid. But yeah, I guess they were pumping like the go green, save the earth. I missed all that.
Captain Planet, Secret of the Ooze. Like, people would just talk about chemicals like it was the C word. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, oh, chemicals. And you're like, everything's made out of chemicals. Literally, all matter is chemicals.
Because then we would go beg our moms to, like, bleach our hair or frost tip our hair. It's like, but also, don't pollute. Like, well, but you're kind of, okay, whatever. I guess you want to get a girlfriend, so that makes sense.
I care about the planet, but I also like chicks. So it's kind of a yin and yang thing I got going.
Well, I can only do my part. It's an uphill battle for us. Matt, I know there's a few specific movies of the 90s that we always said, like, they made us believe things that were in no way, shape, or form grounded in actual reality. Is there anything that you remember specifically as a movie where you're like, oh, yeah?
I'm going to leave some of those to you, because I'm going in a totally different direction. So, as a 31-year-old today, just to give you a little backstory, sitting at my little desk, and the boss man came up, slammed some papers down, and said, hey, these 3 reports need to be done by 5 o'clock. And I'm like, what the fuck? Reports take an hour each, and it's 3 o'clock. This can't be done. Literally, you just...
Is that when you realized you were living in Office Space, the movie?
Yeah, pretty much.
Thanks, Peter.
And I'm like, this cannot be done. There's no way impossible I can get 3 things done that takes 3 hours and 2 hours. But when I was a kid, walking down the street, walking in front of my favorite cinema, I would see a couple movie posters. One, Operation Dumbo Drop, where they dropped a fucking elephant out of an airplane with a parachute. I look at my dad, I'm like, yeah, that could happen. Let's go see that. The other one, Free Willy, where a fucking whale jumps over a 10-year-old human boy on top of a cliff onto the other side of the pond. And I think, yeah, that's possible too. I can go see that. As a 90s kid, nothing was fucking off limits, which I will probably segue right into Jeff, where if an intruder came in and he looked like The Rock, 42 years old, but I watched 3 karate movies that day, I could beat the fuck out of him. Easy.
Yeah.
No problem at all. Nothing was off limits as 90s kids. Now, when you're an adult, like if someone asks you to do something just a little quicker, you're like, that can't be done. It's fucking impossible. You're insane.
Yeah.
Matt, I think you wrote a squad blog about this. It's a great segue, but 2 things that stock was at an all-time high in the 90s that have come crashing down is karate and pizza.
Yep. Pizza,
2 key tenets of the Ninja Turtles. But Michael, you and I were texting about this. 3 ninjas basically said a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old with rudimentary karate skills can beat the shit out of a full-blown, like, international gang of criminals.
Ninja
also
army.
With machine guns.
No, that was the thing. And it was this weird, obviously you'd had kung fu flicks for a good while there. But there was this weird deviation to, either karate. I mean, mostly karate in the 90s, but it was like the perfect segue of like, look at this ability, this secret knowledge we have. That's also a little penned up in like mysticism, a touch, but like just honest effort and like these very like Eastern values, like all of a sudden being taught to these kids. And with that, yeah, they were gods. It was almost like the only people that could ever threaten them was an evil Asian man, usually, who also knew the dark secrets of karate. Like everybody else was just fluff. There was one big guy oftentimes who'd be like the mini boss before the boss.
We're also describing like every Sega Genesis level.
Sure. But basically
Sub-boss.
Mortal Kombat 2 is a movie and a game. Yeah, I mean, it's like these things of like once
Three
you
Ninjas.
learn this, you could do, and that's what was exciting to like kids, is this ability of like I could gain power through these, Eastern disciplines, and I could learn and I could become this thing. I remember taking karate and taekwondo and later on jiu-jitsu, which is obviously Brazilian, but yeah, and it was like this idea of like, oh, this is how I'm going to learn how to kick ass, which to a degree, sure, but the 90s, it was like you aren't even in the fight if you don't know karate.
And to segue everything with karate and the colors that Michael is saying, that is the Power Rangers.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
You're a color and you know karate, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, my Saturday morning routine was sugary cereal, Power Rangers, and then getting my brother in a leg lock in the living room. Sometimes, like, we didn't even finish the Power Rangers episode. It'd be like commercial, and I'd be like, "All right, Greg Hornacek, it's time to leg lock you."
Can I think I know something that was, I would argue, even more than like one specific martial art discipline being important. I think there was a big thing about making noise when you attack someone in all movies. Like, maybe it started.
The Green Ranger did that to it. I mean, he couldn't do a move without yelling or something.
Also, I was watching like some clips from like the beginning to like Ninja Turtles and Three Ninjas before this, but I realized like if you could jump and do a spinning back kick, you would win every time.
Yep. You just stole my wife in the 90s.
Your enemy would run up to you, stop while you jumped in the air, get kicked by your flat top sneaker, and then spin dramatically out of frame, giving you enough time to throw a punchy one-liner before the next member of your squad did the exact same thing.
It was the 90s version of Cream Skyhook. It was unfucking stoppable.
Yeah, there's no way to defend it. To your point, Matt, like the real time you knew when a martial artist was serious was obviously hi-ya was like the catchphrase. But if you put a K in front of it, K-ya! It was like, holy shit.
That's another level. It takes years of practice to learn the kia versus the hi-ya.
You hear a kia, it's like, retreat! It's a death sentence. The thing I love at the beginning of Three Ninjas, we joked about this in our commentary, they train by, like, breaking a bunch of potted plants. In reality, you do that, and your mom comes home, and she's like, what the fuck? I just spent $400 at Lowe's on this.
Yeah, that's not fair. That's not fair to mom at all. I think I'm a big fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme, particularly his Criterion Classic Bloodsport.
And that's what we need to do, Matt.
Please do it.
I don't think I've ever seen a Van Damme movie start to finish, actually.
I'll walk you through it.
Bloodsport has been my brother and I, Ryan, had started my family, forced them to watch it like 8 or 9 years ago at Thanksgiving because it was on. And we've watched it every single year since on Thanksgiving. And it gets better each time. You get more invested in Jackson and Frank Dukes and Chong Li. Anyway, it's a masterpiece in more ways than one.
Does it have anything to do with Thanksgiving, or is it set on Thanksgiving, or was it just on?
We make sure we have more than one copy at the house, and we make sure that we watch it every time on Thanksgiving.
I think the assistant set designer was born in November, so yeah, kind of.
Jean-Claude Van Damme's like, in Belgium, Thanksgiving is not a thing, but I will roundhouse kick for you. For the Native Americans. What? Doesn't even make sense. All right. Few tropes I want to run through. I mean, the first one I had was karate was ever present. We already went through that. Yes. No matter what the setting was, could be a business office or like the moon. Karate.
A bar in Missouri, Roadhouse. I think that was 89, but close enough.
Matt, one we forgot that you said you could always tell the key villain of the movie because they would typically have a ponytail.
Yeah, that's the only way you know. Or they'd be from out of country.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that was almost all of them were foreign. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we weren't ready for Anglo-Saxon antagonists yet.
Different time.
Another thing I wrote down was any deficit in any sporting event is not insurmountable. Basically, like you thought as a kid, like Hey, it's halftime, and you're like, yeah, but it's a football game, and we're down 72-3. So, and with the same fucking players going out there, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, but we have those 2 trick plays. Like, let's say we score on both of them. What happens?
You guys are in dangerous territory since I'm from Atlanta, so just tread carefully. That's all I'm trying to say. Because still a subject. But
yeah,
no, you're right. Like the Big Green or shit, of course. Think
about even Little Giants at halftime.
Little Giants.
When they're terrible at the first and basically, they get one player and then somehow they're better.
Well, the one player, who was always from like a broken home every time. And like the coach or someone had to try hard to get them on the team.
It was like he needed the team as much as they needed him.
The best player never wants to play.
Of course.
Makes no fucking sense.
Who's never actually your main person. Like whether that's Mighty Ducks or Sandlot or Big Green or Little Giants. It's never like your perspective character. But that was the thing. It's like once they learned, like all of a sudden they all got better. And always, I love the idea of like the singular token girl who would come, who was never anything but amazing. You know
right. I mean, think Icebox, who fits both the tropes. Because remember, Matt, she didn't want to play because she wanted to be a cheerleader. So
this is way before like what she was. It's celebrated now, like it's fantastic. Back then, it wasn't so much. Yeah.
Yeah, back then.
Whatever you wanted to be. Fuck, you could switch every day if you want. We don't care.
Back then, being a girl was character. Like that's all you had to do to have a character.
You're the girl. So
like, oh, sorry, girl. I'm done. I'll take a break.
Yeah, you're in the pitch meeting. So what about her?
Gotta write that kid next.
I said she's a girl. Yeah, so that's her characterization. Did you not hear that? Yeah, and then fat kid too.
Sure, what you mean, ma'am.
Because he's fat, so he'll be like eating M&Ms at inopportune times.
It was like this weird. It was almost like reverse, like I don't know, like sensitivity, where it's like instead of actually like portraying these people as rounded human beings, I'm gonna make them this one defining trait, hang everything on that, and then we'll be like, no, but look at how great they are. But they are this. Don't you ever forget for a second that they're this.
It's our fault because we just accepted it. Oh yeah, fat kid. So he eats.
And rather than it just being a guy who happens to be fat, it was fat kid and girl. Anyway.
And as someone who played sports at, kind of a high level, I played in college a little bit. Like the bad team was always how actually like real teams were run. And the good team was like, oh, we're just having fun. You got to have fun. You play better. But the bad team, the ones like, you're the villains. I'm like, dude, that's the way real sports actually is. Like, you actually got to like work and try, and the coach might yell at you.
Oh, my God, you're totally right. The good team was always coached by just a dad. His luck.
Rick Moranis.
Hey, Rick Moranis.
Have fun, guys. It's going to be great. And we might win, but we're
I don't know what I'm doing, but we'll find ourselves along the way. And isn't that a victory in and of itself?
In serious sports, the word fun is never used, I don't think. Unless you like win, you go to strip club or something.
The one thing I do want to kind of talk about, because it reminded me, like there was another trope that I just thought about that I see a lot that I love. It's usually hung up on like the dads who need a redemption story, and it's the dad who shows up late to the game in the first act.
Oh yeah.
That was such a, whether it's like Jingle All the Way or like, I'm pretty sure in Hook, did that happen?
Yeah, Hook
he misses his kids, and then
Little Giants it happened. The dad that was always working, and then he came, and then the kid ran to him.
I'm glad you said that, Matt, because my last trope I had, I have one more I want to mention, but dad who works too much to pay attention to his child.
Yeah, that's every 90s movie.
It's a great one. Look,
he's just trying to make money so his kid can do karate or whatever stupid shit he's into.
So you can do karate and resent me. A great one I had, and this wasn't as prevalent, but I remember, like, now it's just so counterintuitive, so I had to write it down. But it was getting paid to do something you love equals sellout.
Yep.
Yeah.
Specifically, like Brink.
The movie Brink. I watched that movie a month ago with my friends because I was like, there was a long period where that was my favorite movie.
Yeah.
And I watched it again, and there are some movies I'd seen recently that I was like, oh fuck, I'm worried. The Big Green does not hold up. I wanted to hold
I'm
up.
not surprised. I don't even want to try it.
I
'cause
never
know
thought
it's
the big green
fucking-
held up. to begin with.
The,
I'm not a soccer guy.
the
so.
Matrix, I was expecting to fucking lose my shit, and I enjoyed a lot of it, but I was laughing the whole time at how corny it was. I did not expect that. But Brink, man, fuck yeah, Brink. That movie fucking slaps.
It's like you can't fucking do what you love and get paid for it. Like what?
Like actually,
Isn't
that's
that the
called the
dream?
American dream, that you do a job that doesn't feel like work.
And even D2 the Mighty Ducks. Remember how much shit Bombay gets for getting paid to coach people? Like, this is a 40-hour-a-week thing. Now that we're in the Goodwill games, like, how do you want me to pay my rent?
They'd be like, I'm in sales. I tell my sales manager, like, no thanks, I'm a soul seller. I don't do this for commission. For the love of
I'm a soul tax preparer. So
Oh, okay, cool. We just won't pay you then. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
give me those deductions.
The best character, I think, in Brink, the dad is great. Like the dad, he's trying to connect, and you're like, okay, dad who doesn't understand his son, got it. And then 2/3 of the movie, he's like, look, I don't understand what the fuck's going on with you. I don't get why you like this thing. I don't get why you can't be normal like your sister or like me or your mom. But it's okay. If you like this thing, more power to you. You know, you still need a job though, but go for it. And he's like, all right, man, Team Pup and Suds, that's us. I'm going into this fucking finals just like, and I'm going to skate better.
But it makes no sense, because what dad wouldn't love his son to be that driven by something, and it's technically a sport. I mean, he's not a kid that just sits around and watches TV all day. Like, he's driven to be the best at what he does. He's like a Michael Jordan, pretty much.
It was for sure, but back then, that was the whole thing. Is like, it's hard to imagine, but there was a period where like snowboarding was seen as a ridiculous thing on a mountain, and in the 90s, skateboarding, rollerblading was like.
I'm so glad you said that, because my last trope I had is, if you skate or surf, society won't accept you.
God
It's
damn
like,
it.
what is so weird about those? I don't understand at all. Like, Michael, your family goes skiing and snowboarding every year. Can you imagine if everyone on the mountain's like, it's a damn shame. You guys, I don't understand. We strap a board to our feet.
They probably smoke marijuana too.
Do you ever see those videos of like these mountains that are like finally like being opened up to snowboarders in like the 80s for the first time?
No.
It's great. People are like, look, you know, they want to do their own thing. That's fine, but I think they should do it on their own mountain. It's like you just see,
because they turn one board sideways.
Serious. I'm serious.
So Johnny Tsunami's true.
It was true. It was true. I don't know if it is.
Such an urchin, Matt. It's unbelievable.
Check out that movie commentary too.
Dude, that movie.
Real Force Squad library.
That movie, Michael, you'd appreciate this. We get into like a big. We had this subplot theory that just kept building and building. That the reason Johnny Tsunami's dad hates his own father is because his grandpa had an affair with his mom.
Oh, I know. His mom is, and my girlfriend will actually understand this. She's seen this movie recently too. Unbelievably attractive, and unfortunately attractive.
Like Johnny would not want his friends to come over because it would just be a problem.
Yeah, and she's great. And that's the other thing about that movie is Johnny Tsunami is not the main character. Like that's the grandpa. He's Johnny Capaholo.
Yeah, that's the grandpa.
Well, because they were like, dude, we got the guy from fucking Mortal Kombat. Put him in this movie more.
Shere Khan.
Put him in. He needs time. That's it. You think that's like do you think the guy came back? He's like, slams that paper down. He's like, we got him. He fucking signed.
Bargain, pennies on the dollar too.
What a role for him too. He kills it. Like,
yeah, he's great at it. Yeah.
It's better than it should be.
It really is. All right, anything you guys want to touch on before we move on to our protein shake?
I think we've done great work so far.
That was pretty in-depth. All right, Matt, I'm going to toss this over to you first. This is where we go around. Our second part of our show is our protein shake. We talk about what's in our cup, also known as what have we watched lately. I got a light one this week. Matt, I'll toss it to you first. Do you want to save labor of love for the very end?
Yeah.
Though?
I got two things I just want to talk about. It's weird. I'm going to get kind of serious, I guess. I hate doing this on the pod, but it's serious time. I've been watching serious shit. First thing, it was on CMT last night. The Guardian. Kevin Costner, Ashton Kutcher. Great fucking movie. This is the one thing I want to bring up. Why isn't Kevin Costner celebrated as such an iconic actor like Robert De Niro? I will never understand this. Not only is this guy been in probably the greatest baseball movie ever, probably the greatest golf movie ever, and he's been in like so many fucking iconic movie roles. Dances with Wolves is Oscar worthy. Yeah. This movie, what he does in this is Oscar worthy. And if you've ever seen Hatfields and McCoys, which is a docu-series he did for Discovery Channel, one of my favorite Westerns, and I'm a guy who has watched every fucking John Wayne movie. Tombstone's one of my favorite movies, but that is a fantastic Western. Kevin Costner should be talked about with Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Al Pacino, all of those guys. I'm not sure why he's not. It seems to me he's not in the in crowd in Hollywood, because in the Oscars and Golden Globes, he's never there. And even if he doesn't have movies up, like some of these other actors like Clooney, Hanks, they're still there. I think Costner is a better actor than Tom Hanks. I will put that out there, because he can do sports fun movies or he can do serious movies. Tom Hanks has proved he can do fun movies. He doesn't do them anymore, but he basically just does Oscar bait right now.
I think you got a lot of good points. I will say that there is something to that kind of last point you said, where sometimes an actor is as good as the roles they choose. I think, when you talk about what influences a film, and I'm kind of coming from a slightly biased perspective, but I genuinely believe this, like an actor breathes like character, right? But you can't act your way out of a bad movie. If the script is bad, if the direction's bad, you're not going to make a bad film great. It's the same reason why Samuel Jackson, when he's sticking with Quentin Tarantino, he's doing all these great pictures. But outside of that, he's just kind of taking whatever, and it's like we don't remember those roles half as much as the ones that he's done with Tarantino, So I think Costner he's had some great movies. I don't think he's had as many necessarily like legendary films that hold our gaze as much as like Taxi Driver or being, the Godfather in the flashback of Godfather 2 or,
I forgot.
There's a lot. Being with Martin Scorsese and being in that in crowd, it's not nothing. So a lot of that attention that gets thrown to Robert De Niro or might get thrown to it's like, yes, but I think a lot of times it's almost like they're in these roles because of what the director in this movie's bringing, I dare say.
It's a buddy crowd. It's a buddy system, obviously. I just want to leave you with this before I go to my next point. Kevin Costner, filmography, The Bodyguard, Dances with Wolves, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, The Untouchables, the Al Capone movie, which actually Pacino was in, The Highwaymen, which I love, Field of Dreams, which is a great fucking movie and honestly one of the best baseball movies ever. The Guardian. He's Wyatt Earp. That wasn't a good one. No Way Out. Fantastic movie. Silverado, his first movie, a Western. Open Range. Draft Day, which is also a great movie. JFK, a lot of people fucking forget about, which is a great movie. Molly's Game, he's great at. Tin Cup. For Love of the Game, 13 Days, which is the JFK movie. There's so many great fucking movies he is in. 3,000 Miles to Graceland.
He's in Molly's Game?
I just don't think he gets the credit that a lot of these other actors do, and I just don't understand it. I don't know if he is just not in that Hollywood in crowd. He doesn't do the politicking that a lot of these other guys do. I never see him at award shows, which is really weird.
Are people still mad about Waterworld and The Postman? Let it go, guys.
Maybe. Maybe him fucking Cal Ripken's wife had something to do with it. I'm not sure.
Did you see what she was wearing, though? It's like...
Last thing I will say, and I don't want to get, well, the problem is I don't think people want to get too into this. I think that's why we're in the problem we are. But Netflix has a show called 13th, which is about the 13th Amendment. Very interesting.
Sorry, is it like a series or is it like a one-off?
Just one documentary, just one. I think it was like an hour. So the 13th Amendment obviously is, about civil rights. So they booked the 13th Amendment, but basically a couple months later they did the, fight on crime amendment. So it's pretty much showing how America just said, how can we shut these people up? Let's get the 13th Amendment, but then let's put, we're tough on crime. So basically we can control them that way. And it's something that we just keep showing. And this is not just has to do with race. This has to do with a lot of things in our country, which I love our country. This is a great country. It's better than a lot of countries. I'm just saying it still could be a little better if we all work together. But we need to quit just doing stuff to shut up people and actually listen to people and try to make shit better. And if you can watch this documentary, I think it would make you, if you see the perspective on what's happening right now, you already see it. If you don't, or if you're still kind of confused about it, I think this will really bring it up. There's some touching scenes on here with a guy, an African-American dude with just like he's dressed pretty well with a top hat. And these white people just keep knocking off his hat and kind of pushing him. And basically people are like, well, that's not right, but he's in the wrong neighborhood. But nowadays we're just thinking like, dude, like what the fuck? Like there's a lot of stuff here that if it doesn't make you cry or make you want to punch your TV, then you probably just maybe need to, seek counseling or be a different person, because this is a very good documentary for everyone to watch, not just not a certain point of view. But I highly fucking recommend it. But it just shows, man, our justice system. And honestly, not to get too political, but if you think, a certain woman senator in California gives a shit about blacks, then I feel sorry for you. And if you think a certain president, just because he has a Bible, is religious, I feel sorry for you. It's awesome to have naive people, but guys, you got to watch this shit. Like, our establishment sometimes just passes stuff just to shut you up. They're not trying to make things better. That's the last thing I'll say, because we're not a political pod. But after a while, man, you gotta say something about this shit.
To that point, too, I mean, it's almost like you just said, the government's just passing stuff to shut people up. So sometimes you just need them to give you something to shut up about. Like, I mean, it's like when you make your voice heard, it's like that's the basis of how this country was founded. I mean, truly, It's the idea of like not accepting the status quo of how things are, So I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, and at this day and age, I mean, we all just, if you see some injustice, man, we got to fix it. Like, 2020 has been just a brutal year, and we just need people to be good people. And if you see something wrong.
And don't shut it down. Fix it. Don't just do it to like, oh, let's make this go away. Let's how do we fix this so this never happens again?
Yeah. Well said, Matt. We can always count on you to bring a little different take here. All right, Michael, what's in your cup? What have you watched lately?
The two shows I've been watching recently, I just watched the show Fleabag for the first time.
I haven't seen it, but critically acclaimed, right? It's one
dude,
every
it's so
Emmy you can
win.
win.
And it's the best kind of critically acclaimed, because it's so fucking vulgar, man. It's just good. It's real. It's very, very English, but it's just brilliant. And she uses a lot of smart devices. Sometimes, we talk about the idea of like a soliloquy, right? Where it's like all of a sudden the lights dim down and I'm addressing the audience. She does this thing where I won't give too much away, but basically the short of it is she's trying to process through her own grief. And so she's using this outlet to address the audience directly. But in the middle of shots, it's just a glance. She'll just spike the camera to add something. And it's a really smart way to kind of keep.
Is it like fourth wall breaking?
Yes, but in a sliver of a second, how I think House of Cards actually did a few of those where they would take these big moments, but it's not this big thing. It's just these quick little you and I are in on the joke sort of moments, and it's great. She's a talent. The other thing I've been watching is the Nickelodeon original Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I've heard great things, and I know M. Night Shyamalan has been put to shame for his live action movie, but I've actually heard that the show does justice.
The show is dope as hell, and that's the thing is, so it's an American show with a lot of Japanese animation influences, and the story's set in a fictional world. How Game of Thrones is sort of a version of medieval Europe, This is kind of a similar thing with like ancient China, India, and Japan, kind of as sort of vague backdrops for a fictional world. But it is a great arc. That shit very much holds up. It was animated in a 4:3 ratio. Keep watching. I promise it's worth it. But no, it's just really
Especially
good.
with the dragons. I mean, it's exactly like Europe.
But it's but no, I mean, just to go back to that point, I think it's number, I think it's like the 13th or 14th highest rated IMDb television show of all time.
Holy shit.
It's deserved, man.
Instead of like thousands.
Dude, it's fucking deserved. I was surprised, but it's just a great, like it's 3 seasons all driving towards one point. And so it's, again, like kind of we were talking about earlier, it's like they introduce the wants early and you can hang the whole show on that. Anyway, it's great.
I mean, Nickelodeon has really faltered ever with animated stuff. One thing, just to backtrack for a second, so I was looking at Fleabag. Olivia Colman, who has won 2 Oscars, she's in this show too.
Amazing.
I knew Phoebe Waller-Bridge was.
She plays such a bitch in the show, and it's perfect.
Damn,
it's so perfect. She's such a talented actor. I love her a lot. Do you ever see The Favorite?
Oh yeah. I hated the movie, but I loved her. She was the only part of it that I liked. She was like, again, in that super, super bitchy, but like would turn on a dime. Like so she would come in and tell a whole group of people to fuck themselves. And if one guy's like, I like your shoes, she'd be like, well, okay, you're fine then. Which is like, I know some people like that in real life.
Yeah, she's right.
Nice. Anything else?
A shit ton of YouTube History Channel videos. That's about it.
YouTube is a dark. One day we'll have to go down like, what's
Dude,
go,
we don't have enough time.
Don't. Yeah, Matt's right. Don't.
I don't get the like, Netflix has.
I didn't know we could talk about shit we watched on YouTube. Banner's thing would be like 3 hours long.
Netflix does the "Are you still watching?" YouTube does the "Are you okay?" To me, like, why are you clicking that? Well, you recommended it. Don't put this on me. So my cup is really low today, but so that this 30-day movie challenge, I know you guys have probably seen this floating around out there, where it's like watch it. There's a different criteria for a movie to watch for 30 consecutive days. Well, I have in no way, shape, or form even been close to watching one per day, but I am on day 5 of the challenge, and day 5 says watch a movie where a character has a job you want. And I already watched Jerry Maguire for day 3, which was watch a movie that starts with the same letter as your first name. So Sports Agent was off the table. And Matt, I was going to do Tropic Thunder because I want Matthew McConaughey's job.
Yeah.
as like a agent in Hollywood. But instead I went with the craptastic Win a Date with Tad Hamilton.
Okay.
Rom-com, because I remembered that Nathan Lane was Tad Hamilton's PR guy, who like he's getting like DUIs and banging supermodels, and he's like trying to get him in this big movie, and he's not in as much of the movie as I remembered, and the movie actually sucks. Like Topher Grace does this, and Michael, I'm sure you've worked with actors where it's like, dude, you need to stop. But there's like this really heavy breathing every time he delivers a line. I was like, how did we not get this out in ADR?
Yeah.
But it was bad.
Sometimes people do strange choice. I did a movie called Mine 9, which was a shit show, to be honest. It's out, so you can see it. But there's this. I shouldn't be saying this because you can very easily look this up. But there's this one actor who kept doing this thing where he was in just perpetual state of like woe, where he was just like, oh no, oh no, oh no, and it was just like, I'm like, they're giving him, there's no way to cut around this. He's doing this all the time, and they did their best in the final cut, but good God, man, there are choices and there's choices.
You give it to your editor, you're like, you got your work cut. I would order in lunch today.
So if you need background actors, you should hire us, because it'd be fun for our fans to, since they've never seen our face, to be like, I bet that one's Geiger. No, I bet that one's Banner. There's like 100 people back there.
If you come to Atlanta, I can get you in a murder television show.
But Matt, you're so fat, you would block out all the other
true.
background actors.
I'm fatter than fuck. So
Michael, we could put like We could put like a neon green shirt on him, and then you could just put plates in for like the whole, like the Serengeti. Let's say we're filming there. He could be the backdrop.
I would just play the green screen in the back. I just wear green.
Exactly. It's probably cheaper. Another thing I watched, this was like my 9th rewatch, Captain America Civil War. It's on Disney Plus. Might have heard of it. Small indie film. Filmed in Pinewood Studios in Atlanta.
Yeah.
The thing that I did forget about this, like every time I rewatch one of these Marvel movies, I kind of notice something small that I forget about. But you could go look at this movie as it could very well just be like an entirely Black Panther movie. The entire plot is driven by his dad T'Chaka being assassinated and his motivation. And I just remembered him like, oh yeah, Black Panther shows up in that. Like, dude, it's kind of like his
first
movie.
time we see him and Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. But like the whole second act is T'Challa, dude. It's like his film.
Yeah.
Which was cool
I
to
need to rewatch it again. There's a campus we shoot at a lot that did one of their big scenes shot partially, like I think when Spider-Man first shows up and like they're kind of like in that airport hangar where like for the first time it's like, one side, two side, and they talk about it a lot, understandably, but we whenever we shoot there, it's almost like there was a point where movies would happen on this campus university. And everyone would be like, "Oh my gosh, wow, like a movie or a TV show." And now these kids are so jaded, and they could not give less of a shit. And it's just like I'm trying to get to my economics course. Like things are not going well for me. Like I'm not looking forward to this midterm. Can you please let me go through them?
There's nothing cooler than the person who doesn't give a shit anymore.
Yeah,
which is a 90s.
I bet he gets all the chicks.
Yeah, that's not another 90s trope. All right, Michael, I don't know. Sorry, I got to plug in my laptop. That's why I'm off screen. Michael, have you heard of this reality show called Labor of Love on Fox?
Oh, God.
Heard of, know nothing about.
All right, well, I'll briefly pitch it to you. It's very trashy but great quarantine watch television. Basically, a 41-year-old single woman brings in 15 men to compete for the right to impregnate her.
Oh, right. I have heard about this concept, yes. Are you guys aren't competing, are you?
Well, apparently
we were denied.
They lost my audition tape or something.
My sperm count was too low to be on whatever that
apparently means. the profanity-laden tirade I went on it about Chinese textile taxation didn't help me get on the show.
Land, huh?
It's weird. It was a calculated risk on my part, but swung for the fences. So, Michael, while Matt and I briefly discussed this last episode, feel free to chime in with your social commentary or how doomed the state of the world is, the fact that this show exists. So, Matt, episode 2 of Labor of Love, what were your overall thoughts? I only have a few notes. But
so to tie this in to our 90s theme, since I am the most valuable player on this podcast, I didn't talk about the first episode because I wasn't caught up. But as the best player, I'm showing up at halftime to save you guys' ass. So I am all caught up now.
Trope.
Yeah, another 90s trope. So
we thought you quit the team.
All caught up. Couple things. One, Matt, who has Jeff's heart, and he's a fucking snake in the grass. And this is coming from a WWE fan, guys. And don't let Matt fool you. Matt is less a professional wrestler than Jesse Palmer was a football player in that fucking Bachelor thing he did. Matt is not a professional wrestler at all. He was on a couple documentaries, and then he was like a squash guy for like Roman Reigns when he needed to look fucking tough. He is not a professional wrestler. He's a snake in the grass. I'm sick of him always be like, dude, that's what it's about. Fatherhood on the wall. Don't keep your eye off the prize. The other guy I love is the hick dude from fucking North Carolina that just gets drunk all the fucking time. And he's like, hey, if you don't finish this shot before me, I get to kiss you. That's his fucking basically end for the thing. My guy that I think is going to win it, Jeff, is a South African that actually got her name wrong, called her Cindy. But it doesn't matter because he's the hottest guy on there. He's got the highest sperm count. He's got the perfect 5 o'clock shadow that make Don Johnson from 1980s Miami Vice be like, what the fuck? I need to shave better. and I don't see another guy that's the favorite. I don't know who the other favorite is. I guess it would be Matt, but I think he's going to show himself for who he is.
Yeah, if you're Alan right now, just don't fuck up. Like, don't do anything stupid. Michael,
the last thing I'll say before I throw it to you. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, because Michael will understand like the sort of the aesthetic around presenting a character this way, but the guy Matt he was referring to is a former pro wrestler, but anytime they show him, his like subtext says former pro wrestler, and I'm like, yeah, but what is he doing now?
We don't know what he's doing now. I'm doing what I'm doing.
Less interesting than being a former pro wrestler.
Yeah, he's a current what? Like he has to have a job, right? Sorry,
it's
Matt.
not like, Macho Man when he retired, he was still fucking packed. But things I love about this that's better than The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. One is they're showing everyone's parents, so you're getting more in depth in character development. Yeah. Secondly, is I fucking love how she picks them. Okay, so she's in a house and they're in a house, and it's literally side by side. It's like Texas housing where like it's like a foot apart from the house. So she has up all of their fucking profiles as basically like Tinder, where she swipes right, I want to see you more, or swipes left, we need to talk. But the men see her screen on the other house. So when the man's profile is brought up, they're like, yo, Johnny, you're up. And she swipes right. He's like, oh, you're good. He's like, oh, thank God. But then when Timmy's up, they swipe left. And Timmy's like, what the hell? I thought we had a great date. Now I'm going to, wonder what she wants to talk to me about. So I love that the decision-making is basically seen by the men. I thought that was a really cool fucking anecdote that they brought in.
Do you like how one of the people for We Need to Talk, it's always just like, you're doing a great job. Thanks. I think that's kind of...
That's only we've only 2 episodes in, Jeff, so I want to see more of that. And I also want to see if she says, I don't want to continue dating. I want to see if a man actually steps up and be like, no, let's work this out. Let's try to do that. And if she keeps them, because I think that's a possibility. It's not like a rose ceremony where like, there's no more roses. There's nothing I can do. Literally, there's no rules in this. So if a man actually kind of pleads his case, she might keep him for another week. I think we might see that too.
It's interesting. Okay, a few things I have. So just like in The Departed, there's a rat in the house, and it goes by the name of Angelo.
Yep.
So Michael, the lead dog here, his name is Alan. He's a South African with a chiseled jawline who's a surgeon. His only mistake,
perfect, and it's 5 o'clock shadow.
It's a small thing, but he doesn't know the woman's name that they're competing. He called her Cindy when her name is Christy.
That might come up.
I didn't think that was important, babe, honestly. I mean, if I call you Cindy, maybe that's your fucking name. Maybe you need to change
maybe that's your name now.
Is he still in the #1 spot?
I think he is. In fact, I think he made this chick like him more.
He's top 3.
That's something about that, it's like, you're like, well, if this person thinks so little of me, clearly they must be fantastic.
Right, that's the deal. She's like, I'm the issue.
Women are like that, even though there's 12 men competing for you.
I guarantee you, Christy was like, maybe I wasn't memorable enough to him.
Yeah, and I honestly, I think that's a thing that we all share in a little bit. I truly do. It's like this idea of like, you don't want the person... Like once you've like played that game, like the person that's just like obsessed with you, you're almost like, I'm very well aware of the situation I have going on here. What's wrong with you that you think that's how you should be?
Right. Because certainly the problem is not on the other end of the court. But so the issue is Angelo, his strategy was, when I get my one-on-one time with Christy, I'm going to rat out all the other guys in the house for their shortcomings, i.e. Alan not remembering her name amongst the rest of us.
Yeah, that'll come off well.
And it helped Angelo survive this week, but I told Matt off pod, Christy has zero interest in dating him. She just
wants to know.
Exactly. She's keeping him around for intel. He's basically like in the friend zone now. It's just like, can you tell me what's going on in the house? One other thing they did, which I thought was... The results were not as interesting as I would have liked, but in theory, I get where their head was at. So they did this bear experiment where they were out camping, and the guys would go get one-on-one time with Christy, and they had someone in a pseudo-realistic looking bear costume pretend to like approach them as a couple to test the guy to see how he would respond in a fight or flight situation.
In a bear situation.
Correct, yeah. And for the most part, like most of the guys did pretty well, but there was one guy named Trent.
Yeah, because they're on a fucking reality show.
Right. You're like, are we gonna
somewhat fake-looking bear shows up?
Right.
I mean, it's pretty fake looking, I think. I mean, it was dark.
Right. But to Michael's point, like, you're not going to Bear kills 4 contestants on Fox reality. Like, this is network TV. We're good.
Yeah.
But Trent had a great quote, and I think we can all take this and apply it to our own lives. But he said, quote, this was just to the camera, not to Christy, but he said, I realized you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than Christy.
That's true. And Christy's pretty top heavy, so I think that's doable. And she's 41, so I mean she's not trying out for the high school track team. She's in good shape, but
another thing I wanted to point out, you don't remember this woman until I describe her though, Matt, but Marcus's mom looked like they reanimated the corpse of Joan Rivers.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Oh, that's right. Joan Rivers.
She looks dead. Like
yeah, right? Rip. Big time rip.
She looks like the bad chick from Emperor's New Groove, pretty much.
Oh, what's her name?
What is her name? Now I have to. Damn it, Matt! Now I have to look.
The one with Kronk.
Well, the show's paused now because I have to look this up because I won't be able to sleep at night.
This would be the perfect time, YouTube, to throw in one of your fucking commercials that you do all the time on our fucking videos.
Yzma, yeah. She does look like Yzma. Last thing that I heard as a quote, and maybe one of you guys can make sense of this, because it made zero fucking sense to me. So there's a guy on the show named Walker, who's a funeral director, and he said, quote, as a funeral director, I have good insight into people's emotions.
Yeah, I don't get that either. When he said that, I was like,
there's the immediate thing we're all going to, of course, right? Which is you deal with dead bodies, okay?
Okay.
But okay, all right. This guy also is happening to deal with people in an extremely sad environment, some of which sometimes it's almost an expectation to perform a certain way.
Sure.
And he sees people quite often playing parts that they would never play, almost regular people forcing to act on a somewhat consistent basis.
Could the bartenders say the same thing?
I bet they do.
I didn't think of it from that angle though, like wife of 2 months who wants to get into the will, but she needs to put on the grieving widow.
He's seen that. He's absolutely seen that.
All right, Walker, I give you the benefit of the doubt, because when I first heard the quote, I was like, I don't understand this at all.
Here's where it gets tricky. How often is he bringing up that he's a funeral director? Because the answer ought to be very...
He hasn't been on the show too much.
At least he has a current job, and it's not saying what he formerly did.
Yeah.
You have to respect that a little.
Did I tell you that I was supposed to work with Roddy Piper on the day he died?
Oh, damn.
I'm serious. And thank God I did not, because if he came to our set, I would have been convinced that we were the ones who killed him. I was...
Big time rip to Roddy Piper.
God.
Wow, we dodged.
Roddy.
That would have been horrible.
It would have been cool, but it was like the
He's a personal hero. I'm a huge WWE fan.
I was going to say, Matt got quiet all of a sudden. He's like Jenny.
And I was a big WCW Monday Nitro fan, like in the late 90s. So, I mean, he was a staple in that show, too.
Dude, he was great.
Great. It's a travesty that Ronda Rousey like borrowed his nickname and then shit on the WWE Universe a couple months ago.
Yeah, it's like, why'd you do that then in the first place? No, it was crazy.
Terrible. By the way,
we were working on a shit show, and it was like he was supposed to come out. Like there were talks about he was supposed to be this bigger character, and then he got relegated to this cameo role, and it fell through like a few days before. And then it was like, yeah, we heard he passed. And it was like, oh, my God. And it was like, there was that shock. And it was almost like, but then I was like, Jesus, if we would have been on the set, I would have thought that the stress of this environment would have killed him. Like, which is a selfish thing to think. But I was like, oh, my God. Like, I would, yeah, there's like, I would be here today still being like, we killed that man.
That would fuck you up, at least for me. I mean, yeah. Like...
Oh, my God. Anyway.
All right. Well, the last part of our show, Banner's not here to...
Do you lift, bro?
And that is, do you even lift, bruh? which is the question and answer segment of our show. And today, guys, I kind of need to play a little therapy with you guys. So HBO Max debuted this past week with an insane movie library, as well as television catalog that includes all the old Cartoon Network shows, the DC animated stuff, and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So this is like the new iteration of HBO's streaming app.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the one issue with the app is that, and I say one issue even though it's a major one, it's not currently available on Amazon Fire Stick or Roku, which I've seen like disparate percentages, but that's like 70% of the streaming audience, right? So both sides, obviously, it's kind of the same deal with CBS and the cable company a few years back, are blaming the other one why they couldn't get a deal done. I bitched about this on Twitter because I'm a Fire Stick guy. I have one in every room of my house. And people basically told me, people told me, shut up, watch it on your laptop or your phone. So what I wanted to ask, that's what I was going to say. Am I crazy here? And another question is, with the streaming landscape getting so crowded now, like, is this going to keep happening every time a new app comes out where, like, they can't work out a fucking deal with Amazon or Roku and I have to wait to get it? Matt, I'll go to you first because I know you're a big fellow Fire Stick guy. Like, am I in the wrong here? I don't want to watch this on my fucking...
No, you're not, because actually they took theaters from us, which is a huge screen, and now they're taking my TV screen from me and then getting it on my fucking laptop or my phone. Fuck that shit. Is there a way, though, I'm trying to think, if you can get it on the internet per se, how could you not get it on the Fire? I don't get that.
I think there are some workarounds on like the internet app, but dude, nothing beats just clicking the app and navigating it, you know? Like,
right. I will say I'll pay for this though. Man, you know I'm a big food, beer, watch movie guy, and I will buy like fucking Fruity Pebbles and drink beer and watch the Flintstones. I mean, fuck yeah, I will do that, especially with the Snyder Cut coming on there. I will pay for that service.
Thank you. Michael, if you disagree, that's fine. What are your thoughts on this? Both on, like, why is this not on Fire Stick or Roku? And then is this going to continue to be a problem? Because we know, like, Peacock hasn't come out yet, the NBC app, which is going to take, like, all their, you know, proprietary programming back. The landscape, again, is only going to get more and more inundated.
Yeah, I mean, I think we will come to a point where people realize, like, we've seen, like, the reason streaming apps work, period, is because of the ease of use. I mean, when given the option between waiting for television and seeing an episode as a network broadcast versus now, I mean, that's why it's like, you know, people talk about the golden age of television. The golden age of television started with, like, you know, people being able to DVR stuff, or like you know, like once streaming took off, it's like all these shows started where no longer did you just have to watch one episode and maybe you were caught up, maybe you weren't. They could bank on you being like, oh, you started at episode 1. Now we're on season 6. You know the story. I can do a more complicated narrative. So that is all to say that I'm sure HBO Max will hopefully soon figure this out and realize that, like, the only thing that works is convenience, and convenience is king. So hopefully they, I don't know, find a way to do something. I will say the more streaming services that we do have available, I don't think that's a terrible thing. I think that it, you know, just keeps the market competitive. So hopefully that continues.
Yeah, and Disney Plus had kind of the same deal. Like, I remember they got their deal done at the 11th hour before their launch. But I was like, dude, if I can't get this on my Fire Stick too, because I didn't think I'd already even paid for it before I realized, like, oh, I can't actually even get it yet. Like, which, again, that's my own fault. But I don't know if Amazon, they kind of seem to be the common denominator here. Maybe they play too much of hardball.
Maybe.
To be fair, Jeff Bezos needs money. He's struggling.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, he looks okay now, but, like, you got to think about the future, right? You know, it's like you can't go into 2030 not being a trillionaire. So we'll see.
Right. Yeah. Do you even CEO, bro? Like, just $1 billion?
My heart goes out.
All right. That does it for episode 116. Matt's not here. I don't know where he is, but oh, there he is. Michael, before we let the people go, I know you have a couple projects in the works you probably can't talk about, but where can people find you on the internets if you want them to follow you? And then what projects do you have out there that they should go check out to see all your great work?
Yeah, sure. I've got a couple episodes on the ID channel show Dead Silent that I'll be directing this summer. I've got a few more you can go check out on the ID channel. that are up already. I've got, you can follow me on Twitter, and I think on Instagram it's the same handle. I think I'm full Python Monty with some dots in there.
Oh.
I'll link it in the description. We can figure that out.
If you're genuinely curious, I clearly post all the time. But yeah, no, that's me. Yeah, check out season 5 of Dead Silent, and keep your ears out for more work to come.
And if you get the Discovery Channel, I know for a fact on demand you can go watch all the ID stuff, because I've done it with like Forensic Files.
In case you were worried, in case that times were too calm for you now and tap it, and you need a little bit more excitement and dread in your life, please go check out the ID channel.
Although I will say this, if you go watch ID channel shows, there are shows that like 6 hours pass and you're like, oh, I've not stopped watching.
No,
they're addictive television.
That is very true.
So make sure you're comfortable. Matt, anything you want to leave the people with for episode 116?
No, Michael, thanks for coming on the show, man. We love having guests.
This was great. Anytime. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope I followed the rules correctly, because I had a blast.
If there
There's
are
not
rules,
many rules
yeah,
here.
no one's
You
told
don't
me.
even have to really wear a shirt, because Banner never does. So.
But he
hard
wears
to
a
use.
tie, which is weird. He's like Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
No, he's like, well, I'm not a slob. Jesus. All right, thank you guys for listening to us. Follow us on Twitter at Bro4Squad. If you type in Bro4Squad as 3 separate words on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much anywhere you can listen to podcasts, you will find us there. And of course, check out our website, bro4squad.com, for all of our content and our squad blog. Till next time, since Banner's not here, please pull over for emergency vehicles.
Yeah, even if you're protesting, I'm not sure what Banner sets on that. We'll have to ask him next week.
He's like, well, as long as I can have a koozie with the Miller High Life and fun. Just let me know what the cause is.